Hi folks, I want to talk about Jupiter going retrograde in the sign of Gemini tomorrow, October 9th. I'm recording this on October the 8th to February the 4th. So October 9th of 2024 to February the 4th of 2025. And Jupiter will go retrograde from 21 degrees of Gemini to 11 degrees of Gemini. So it is going to span those 10 degrees 3 times between during his 12 to 13 month transit, 13 month from Jupiter entered Gemini on May the 25th of 2024 and is going to leave Gemini on June the 8th of 2025. Jupiter goes retrograde tomorrow, August the 9th, and he's currently at 21 degrees of Gemini. He's going to go retrograde all the way back to 11 degrees, then go direct on October the 4th, February the 4th, God help us all, and then go straight through Gemini and out. So, wow, this is the most convoluted way of saying the most simplest of facts. Jupiter is retrograde between 11 degrees and 21 degrees of Gemini. He's made it all the way to 21 degrees, going to retrograde back to 11 degrees, go direct, and then go all the way through out of Gemini into Cancer on June the 9th of next year. There we go. We made it. Before I forget, this is an important point. This is one of those reminders because there's not a lot of time left. I am running the $50 30-minute special on how the eclipses are affecting an individual's birth chart, your birth chart. That special is available till October the 10th, till the end of the October the 10th. So if you want to avail of that special, email me. My email address is in the description box below, so that before the end of the 10th, so that we at least, you've emailed me by that time and we can go ahead and schedule it whenever it's convenient for us, but at least I received your email by the deadline. So please know, deadline to avail of, to write to me of your interest in a 30-minute, $50 reading, astrological reading of your birth chart, specific to how the eclipses on the Aries, Libra, and Pisces, Virgo axis are affecting your birth chart. At that rate, that special is available till October the 10th, end of day October the 10th. So please email me before then so that we can go ahead and schedule something if you're interested. Okay, back to Jupiter. Jupiter, as I've mentioned to viewers of this channel multiple times, just to establish a few baseline facts, what I observe is that when Jupiter goes through a sign, and because I use whole signs, WHOLE, Jupiter is going over a particular house while it is going over that sign, transiting that sign. It is transiting a house. And what Jupiter does in that house when he transits is that he ends a 12-13-year cycle and starts a new 12-13-year cycle. The emphasis is more on the ending to create a new beginning and to create the space for a new beginning. The analogy I give that seems to be the most typical of what Jupiter does is Jupiter comes into the house, sees an old couch that needs to be removed, removes it, at least creates the blank space. And from there, things can grow. While Jupiter's still there, sometimes the next couch can be identified or ordered, or can be delivered, or can start to move into the apartment, or can be placed into the apartment. It's rare for it to be placed. It's never a full replacement. It's starting a 12-13-year cycle that's going to grow. And the idea is that this 12-13-year cycle, that it is ending, but starting an auspicious new beginning towards your alignment. What Jupiter's trying to do is she's trying to align you to the alignment you created and you wanted and you wished for and you articulated when Jupiter was going over your 9th house last. So Jupiter going over the 9th house, and if Jupiter is going over the 9th house, if you're a Libra rising, Jupiter is going over your 9th house right now. And Jupiter going over the 9th house is an opportunity for us that's, out of all the Jupiter transits, for me, the most important one. It is an opportunity for you to take stock of where you're at against where you want to be, and to articulate, at least to spirit, whether you do it through a vision board, by writing it down, by asking, by praying, by identifying, whatever you do, what is it that you want to create in this life that is in integrity with who you are, why you feel you are here. And that is a conversation between you and spirit. And then as you at least identify, and I always say identify the bullseye, don't circle around it. Because sometimes we can be so conditioned for some reason to thinking that it's not great to say what we want, and it's selfish, or it's this, or it's that, or it's delusional, or it's whatever. At least identify. It's at least be clear with yourself. And with spirit, you don't have to share it with anybody else. Because until that is defined, it's going to be so hard to move towards something that you haven't even defined for yourself. And it's different strokes for different folks. Some people are very clear about it. Some people are challenged by doing that. And there's no judgment if you feel challenged by, it's understandable. It so much depends on so many factors for each of us with regard to our ability to do that. And the freedom we experience in being able to do that and what it takes to do that for ourselves. So that's Jupiter going over your 9th house. And every successive transit of Jupiter through the remaining 11 houses, Jupiter is going to go into the 10th house and say, what did this person want? Let me try and create an ending and space for a new beginning. Now, you can make a complete change or a complete switch, or you can start something on the side, or Jupiter, I find, will typically try and give you the opportunity to create that auspicious new beginning in alignment. Jupiter moves into the 11th, tries to reframe a part of your social circle to connect with Jupiter going into the 9th. Jupiter goes into 12th. Based on everything that you've learned and articulated over the past 2-3 years, you start to work behind the scenes. Jupiter goes into the 1st. You put that identity onto your business card, proverbially or literally. Jupiter goes into the 2nd. Your income starts to become necessarily more reliant on this direction that you have articulated, and so on and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. Sometimes just the ending and therefore the beginning is created, but it can take a year or two before the actual, and then you can look back to, for example, if Jupiter's going over your 4th house, you might end a certain living situation and find 3 or 4 years down, oh, that was the year that created the opening for me to actually move in the direction that I wanted. And this question of alignment is really significant. If you are already following a path and a life that is relatively or completely aligned as far as you're concerned, then Jupiter will say, all right, what's next? Let's spiral you up in this direction. You wanted to be a sculptor. You wanted to be a doctor. You wanted to be a this. This is what feels right to you. You've been doing this for X number of years. What's next that refines and extends that alignment? What I don't see Jupiter doing, more often than not, in fact, negligibly, is follow conventional, oh, Jupiter, it's a lucky planet, he's going over the 10th house, I'm going to become a CEO. I think there's a greater likelihood that you might get laid off so that you can actually make a break for the right direction that is more aligned to you. Oh, Jupiter is going over the 2nd house, oh, I'm going to make millions this year. It's more likely that you might get into a financial crisis that forces you, that if you made a career-related change 4 or 5 years before, articulated something, to start to earn from that direction, because whatever you were relying on to make that transition has dried up. Jupiter goes to the 4th. Oh, I'm going to move into a mansion. Could just be that pressures are on you to end a particular situation that creates the opening for you to either move to a location, move to a residence, that's in the right direction. Transitions are, and depending on how aligned you are or not, they are challenging. But transitions are where transitions are exciting. Transitions are excitement. And the chart is always moving. And the chart is always asking you, what do you want next? Where are we going next? what is needed next. If you have Jupiter retrograde in your birth chart, and I've said this the past couple of days, past couple of videos I've done, when Jupiter is retrograde in your birth chart, a Jupiter retrograde period can be a time of alignment for you. For 8 months of the year, things don't gel. And for the 4 months of the year, when Jupiter is retrograde, it's possible that you're able to manifest as much as those people who have Jupiter direct in their birth chart, and they do for the 8 months when Jupiter is direct. But I see one requirement for that, which is while Jupiter is direct and things are not quite gelling, you are required to be in action and go after what you want and do your best through that process, because chances are you will learn something specific that needs to be accounted for, that needs to be incorporated in each of the endeavors and the projects and whatever you take on for those 8 months. And then when Jupiter goes retrograde and you try while Jupiter's retrograde, the learnings from the actions that you were taking while Jupiter was direct can then be applied in such a way that you see success. So very important. If you have Jupiter retrograde in your birth chart, it's not, oh, I'm going to be on vacation for 8 months because Jupiter's direct and nothing's going to happen for me. No, I find that it's very, very important for people who have Jupiter retrograde in their birth charts to be in action for the 8 months while Jupiter's direct. Even if it feels like, it's not quite. Because what I find is that when Jupiter goes retrograde, the person is basically doing the same. So, all right, let's give it one more shot. It hasn't happened yet. Let's give it one more shot. And whatever they have learned, whatever was missing from a presentation, whatever was missing from something that was organized, whatever went wrong here, whatever, all those lessons are incorporated, and bam, 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 things can line up and work. If Jupiter is direct in your birth chart, a Jupiter retrograde can feel, there's nothing like a Jupiter retrograde to make you realize just how dependent you are on a certain kind of day-to-day luck, because it feels like it's not that you have to work that much harder. It almost feels a little bit like your guides, for those people who believe in that kind of energy, are on vacation. They're like, I'm sorry, we're resting. Jupiter's retrograde. We're putting our feet up. For 4 months, we're on a holiday. And so all those things that we expect, where we'll do something and something will work out because we're used to having things work out, and all of a sudden that energy is just not there. And it's just like, oh my God, I have to work 3 times harder but it can be so enlightening to get clear on where we are relying on a certain kind of energy to pull us through. It can be so enlightening. The other thing that is really important with Jupiter going retrograde, and this is especially true for people who have Jupiter direct in their birth chart, is that any planet going retrograde has the sense of, and in Jupiter's case, it would translate to something like this: I am trying to create an ending and a new beginning, but we're not there yet. There's something that needs to be dealt with. So I'm going to reverse for about 4 months, so that whatever it is that needs to be understood, incorporated, processed, whatever's pending, whatever is stopping me from being able to create this new beginning, this ending, can be dealt with. Because then when I go direct, February 4th to June the 8th, I can complete whatever it is that I came here to start. So it becomes important to be present to. If you know your chart and you know which house Jupiter is transiting, and if you know when Jupiter was over your 9th house last, and you have a sense of what kind of change Jupiter has been through all his transits, been trying to make an alignment with that articulation that you hopefully or may have done, because sometimes the articulation happens if we don't know that this is what Jupiter in the 9th house does. I find that people do identify or are inclined to ask, pray, hope. The status quo becomes sort of unbearable enough that a person is automatically thinking about, these are the ways in which I'm really leading the wrong life. This is what I'd like to do. This is when Jupiter goes over the 9th. So Jupiter going retrograde, it becomes a time period when it's time to consider, how can we assist Jupiter? What is pending? What needs to be done to allow Jupiter to align us in such a way with the ending and the new beginning we think he's trying to create in the house that he's transiting, in connection to his last ninth house transit? And in connection to his last ninth house transit is less important than which is the house that Jupiter is transiting right now. And take endings with a bit of a pinch of salt. If Jupiter is going over your 11th house, you're not going to lose and discard friends that you've been friends with for 30 years. But there's a replacement of, it can be a collegial circle. In the 11th house, I find it's very much a concept also of, you know how we say a graduating class of 98, 2008, 2018. It's like an ensemble, a group that we travel with. So when Jupiter's going in the 11th, it can often feel like, oh, 2 years ago I articulated I want to go in this direction. Last year there were these kinds of career changes that helped identify and move me along and create that new beginning in this direction. And now I find myself talking to, introduced to, surrounded by people who have a similar aim or goal. They don't have to become my best friends, but I'm telling you, over the next 12, 13 years, you will be able to say, oh, I've been traveling along with these people on this journey, for example. When Jupiter goes to the first, he's not eradicating your identity, but there is this thing about being able to go out in the world and say, hi, I'm, in my case, Abi. I am an astrologer. I am whatever it is that you've adopted. This is what is on my business card. And if it's not a physical business card, this is how I'm identifying it. I've incorporated that identity. If you have Jupiter retrograde in your birth chart, then it's the same principle. Jupiter going retrograde means that the ending and new beginning hasn't completely been created, except in your case, it's likely that the ending and the new beginning is going to get created while Jupiter is retrograde. And then the work will get done once Jupiter is direct. Now, what is interesting this year is that pretty soon, shortly-ish, we're going to have the personal planets, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun, and the new moon start occurring in Sagittarius. Venus goes into Sagittarius on October the 17th, in about 9 days' time. And then Mercury will follow, and then the Sun will follow around the November the 22nd when he normally does. And then, of course, we have the new moon on November the 30th in Sagittarius. And so as the planets do that, they will oppose Jupiter. But more intriguingly, Mercury goes retrograde between November the 26th and December the 15th of this year. And the retrograde Mercury will oppose Jupiter 3 times, specifically on November the 18th, December the 4th, and December the 24th. Excuse me, December the 26th. So once again, November the 18th, Mercury is direct, opposing Jupiter. He goes retrograde on November the 26th, and on December the 4th, opposes Jupiter again. He goes direct on December the 15th, and on December the 26th, he opposes Jupiter one more time. And on the 24th of December, Jupiter squares Saturn. Now, the last time Jupiter squared Saturn, Jupiter was direct and Saturn was retrograde. This time, Jupiter is going to be retrograde and Saturn is going to be direct. Jupiter is going to square Saturn 3 times as part of this square. Give me 1 second. There's something I need to look up. Some of you are used to me doing this while I'm talking. Sorry. You know what I'm looking up, probably. Jupiter-Saturn square, August 19th, December 24th, and June 15th. And on June the 15th of next year, both Jupiter and Saturn will be, Jupiter will be in Cancer and Saturn will be in Aries. But 3 squares between Jupiter and Saturn. August the 19th of this year, while Jupiter was direct and Saturn was retrograde. December 24th of this year, while Jupiter is retrograde and Saturn is direct, and then on June the 15th of next year. So the energy of Jupiter making this transformation, when the planets, the personal planets are transiting Sagittarius, they're the faster moving planets, they will be asked to serve Jupiter. There's something, if there's an opportunity brewing in the Sagittarius part of the chart when Venus goes through, and if Mercury and the Sun and the new moon in Sagittarius, while the new moon in Sagittarius and the full moon in Gemini, the moons themselves don't aspect Jupiter that closely, but encoded into the new moon in Gemini, which is on November the 30th, is the December 4th Mercury-Jupiter opposition. So Mercury opposing Jupiter is going to be a feeling, an energy that is going to be present for all of December. Some opportunity out of all the retrogrades that are coming up. Those of you who have been watching my channel know that I've been talking about the fact that one of the arcs that we're considering is moving in a desired direction towards the Aries part of our chart to honor the Aries North Node eclipses till the end of the first week of June next year. And I've mentioned that since September the 2nd, but especially since October the 2nd, which was a solar eclipse in Libra, a South Node solar eclipse in Libra. And I'm not going to expand too much about eclipses in this particular video because then I'll spend 15 minutes repeating what I've just been saying in the last few videos. If you're interested, there's a new moon solar eclipse video in Libra, there's a monthly overview, there are weekly overviews, there's plenty of content that you can check out. And if you're interested in just the eclipses themselves, there's a video on the new moon solar eclipse in Libra, there's a video on this arc and this timeline between September 2nd and the end of the first week of June, and you can look up both of those, or whatever content you need to. But I'm not going to go into it here other than to say that part of this 9-10 month birth canal of moving in a certain direction, releasing what we need to in the Libra part of the chart, that's the messaging of at least the October 2nd new moon solar eclipse in Libra. And December 2nd, the week before, week after, plays a role in that as well. But starting November the 26th, we go into this series of retrogrades, what I'm sort of calling these labor pains. Mercury goes retrograde in Sag. Mars goes retrograde. Mercury's direct on December 15th, but prior to that, on December the 4th, Mars goes retrograde in Leo, goes retrograde back into Cancer, goes direct February the 24th, I think, in Cancer, and then enters Leo again in the middle of April, I think. And then in March and April, both Venus and Mercury go retrograde in Aries back into Pisces, direct, and then back through Pisces and into Aries again. Now, the Venus-Mercury retrograde in Pisces and Aries makes sense to me narrative-wise, because the eclipses are moving from Aries to Pisces. We those two houses are being worked. Mars is retrograde between Cancer and Leo also makes sense to me to some extent in this overall narrative that we've got going on all the way between now and the end of first week of June next year. The Sagittarius Mercury retrograde is a bit of an anomaly insofar as we're not really expecting the sign of Sagittarius to play some sort of huge role this year. You know, we're going to have the personal planets transit through Sagittarius. There's going to be a new moon. There's going to be a full moon in Gemini, blah, blah, blah. But there's a Mercury retrograde. And not only that, Venus will create opportunities in Sagittarius when she transits. And then Mercury and the Sun, Mercury will pick up on those opportunities and introduce a communication element to them. Mercury will go retrograde shortly after the Sun enters. On November the 30th, then there's a new moon. December becomes the month of Sagittarius, of focusing on opportunities, but Mercury is retrograde during that time. And so there's something that needs to be worked and reworked. And all of this somehow is going to contribute to Jupiter trying to create the ending and new beginning in the Gemini part of the chart. Not only because Mercury directly opposes Jupiter 3 times as part of the retrograde, and the Sun's going to oppose Jupiter, and Venus will oppose Jupiter, but also because the Mercury-Jupiter opposition is going to be encoded into the Sag new moon on November the 30th, and that energy will be present for the rest of December, till the Capricorn new moon on December the 30th. Bit of a mystery. We're going to have to wait to see what Venus cooks up in Sagittarius as she makes her way through Sagittarius, starting 9 days time. That Mercury will then pick up on, because Mercury enters Sagittarius. Not that, in about a week's time, Mercury is going to be entering Sagittarius. When does Mercury enter Sagittarius? Do we know this? Do I know this? Do I have that date? Hold on, people. Thanks for your patience. Venus enters Sagittarius October 17th. Mercury enters Scorpio October 13th. Not that far into November. Hold on. Don't get excited. Don't worry. Don't stress. Avi's got this. Mercury's in Sagittarius on November the 2nd. About 2 weeks after Venus goes in, Mercury goes in. Cooks up some communication that then he has to reverse over starting November 26th. We're going to have to wait until these planets go into Sagittarius to understand what it is that's presenting itself in the Sagittarius part of the chart that can assist in serving Jupiter in such a way that Jupiter is able to create his ending and new beginning. And what is interesting is, because we're talking about the squares to Saturn and Pisces, all the personal planets and Jupiter will square Saturn. And the Sagittarian planets will then square Neptune before they enter Capricorn. So the personal planets will serve Jupiter. Jupiter's ending and new beginning is going to have to be necessary in order for Saturn in Pisces to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. Now I'm getting a little bit detailed here. So this video is meant to satisfy people of all, it's a general video, of all astrological backgrounds. So if that just became a little too much for you, whatever it is that I've said so far should hopefully be intriguing enough. But the bottom line is, whatever this opportunity is in the Sagittarius part of the chart, and whatever Jupiter's trying to do, somewhere there's a dependency, somewhere you're going to need to factor, and we know this. The opportunities for us, the adventure, is symbolized by the Aries, Taurus, and Gemini part of the chart. The Gemini part of the chart is where Jupiter is trying to create an ending and new beginning. And the part of the chart that needs to be stabilized, where there's been a crisis in Pisces since 2012, you'll have heard me say this. No video is complete on this channel without me saying this at least once. And where the crisis became a real crisis in 2014, 15, especially 16, 17, Saturn is trying to stabilize that by giving us a reality check, by making us process and understand what we may have done to contribute to that crisis, by structuring artistic, spiritual plans in the Pisces part of our chart, by actively asking us to deal with any deceptive or undercover or gaslighty behavior. That's the Pisces part of the chart. But we can't quite, Jupiter can't completely create his ending and new beginning without having that conversation with it, without getting to that stop sign where Saturn stops it and they look at each other, Jupiter and Saturn's like, you go first. Jupiter has to take some sort of action So the personal planets in Sagittarius have to take some sort of action to help Jupiter, and Jupiter has to take some sort of action to help Saturn stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. At the same time, there are opportunities coming up in the Sagittarius and the Gemini part of the chart. This last bit with the Saturn square became a little esoteric. I get it, but it's here. It's here on the video. And depending on, as you process the Jupiter retrograde, you can always come back to it. I will certainly talk about it again as we do our monthly overviews and our weekly overviews and even the general videos. But I can't do a video on Jupiter retrograde and not mention the square to Saturn and not mention Mercury 3 times opposing a retrograde Jupiter, and the fact that that second opposition is encoded into the new moon in Sag on November the 30th. But if we remove all that work that Avi is doing as an astrologer and boil it down to one thing, Jupiter's trying to create an ending and a new beginning in the Gemini part of the chart, an auspicious new beginning, trying to create a beginning, trying to create an alignment for you, an aligned new beginning, aligned to your sense of integrity with yourself, with what is in your heart, in the Gemini part of your chart, linking that alignment to whenever Jupiter went over your 9th house last. And he's going retrograde. And he's going retrograde because, interpretively, he cannot complete that ending and new beginning without processing something, without helping us get real on something. It may be that we have resisted something and not let it go completely. It may be that there's a little bit more work to be done. It could be that some of the opportunities that are coming up in Sagittarius actually help Jupiter, because how would you create an ending and a new beginning? You're dependent on opportunities to come up. You're dependent on events to occur in such a way that, if Jupiter's going over your 10th house and the personal planets are going to go over your fourth house, let's say Sagittarius is in your 4th house and Gemini is in your 10th house. That would be, if Gemini is in your 10th, you would have Cancer, you'd be a Virgo rising. Yes. If Gemini is in the 10th, you would be a Virgo rising. So if you're Virgo rising and Jupiter is trying to create an ending and a new beginning for you from a career perspective, it could be that there's something that comes up that Jupiter is dependent on with regard to you, where you live. It could be as big or broad as the city you live in. It could be how you're working from home, how you're set up at home. It could be something to do with the relationship with the mother. But it's likely to be something residential for a lot of people. How it feels at home. But is there something from a real estate perspective that has to be factored in? Is Jupiter dependent on something? Something happens. And for some of you, it may not even be necessarily seem like a positive opportunity. It might be that something happens and your landlord says, I'm going to be selling this place, so I'm happy to pay. It could be something that is an ending as an opportunity in the 4th house. But then that prompts you to say, well, I've always wanted to do this. And Jupiter's like, yeah, thank you. This allows me to create this new beginning for you, to create this ending and new beginning for you in the career part of your chart. And with Saturn going over your 7th in that example, it could very well be that absolutely getting real, the right contracts for you, making sure that you're clean and you're as well behaved as you can be in your relationships with key partners, landlords, clients, the companies you're contracted to, employers. Those are all 7th house relationships too. Anywhere where we have a verbal or a written promise. Now, this is a very high-level interpretation. If it was an individual birth chart, it would be, you know, you would drill down in a more specific, but broadly speaking, I'm giving you a sense of how this might work. Jupiter may be wanting to make a new beginning somewhere, and it needs to rework something, and it's not quite there, it's not quite ready, it's not quite done, and it needs these planets in Sagittarius. It needs Venus to come in, open up some opportunity. It needs Mercury and the Sun and the new moon to act on that opportunity in such a way that can be a catalyst to this Jupiterian ending and new beginning. And somewhere through that process, they contribute to Saturn stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart as well. They certainly need to factor in. It can't be between the personal planets and Jupiter we're just gonna throw caution to the wind, and we're just in Saturn's like, no, no, no. You can do this, but we will keep it real. And you will not make the situation in Pisces any worse than it is. And in fact, you will do it in such a way that it might help me, Saturn, stabilize this damn crisis in Pisces that's been going on since 2012 that you haven't been able to do anything about. So let's do this in a way that is sustainable and that increases stability. Change is very much in the air, you know, and as I said, part of moving towards the direction that we want to move in with that Aries North Node eclipse that's coming up March 29th and this whole overall arc, and honoring the October 2nd South Node solar eclipse in Libra, releasing what needed. Now these are not transits of awareness. These are transits of change and action. And even if these past two eclipses have been relatively quiet for you, I am willing to put money on the fact they're not that quiet. The message will be loud and clear, especially the message with regard to what needs to be released in the Libra part of the chart. And you might say, well, Abhi, what does that have to do with? Well, the planets as they're moving through Libra are trining Jupiter. All the planets and it's a cumulative, you know, I've said this before. The planets are in conversation with each other. The energies are in conversation with each other. They don't have to be on the telephone. But it is one overall narrative. Or if it's multiple threads of that, it's all leading to an overall broad message. The direction we want to move in, where the growth is, symbolized first by the Aries, second the Taurus, third the Gemini part of the chart, and what needs to be stabilized. And if it's not stabilized, it really feels like it's just going to create chaos in the Pisces part of the chart. And there's a time through all this of contemplation and processing and things coming up and us preparing and us taking in and us understanding and us taking steps and feeling thwarted. But now it's like we've had a lot of that since March, April of 2023 to September of 2024. And now between September and the end of the first week of June of next year, and the end of the first week of June of next year is not only 2 months after the solar eclipse, it is also when Jupiter changes signs. And is also when Mars is getting ready to move through Leo and go into Virgo. It's one arc. And it is an arc of action, and it is an arc of change, and change is on us. And the eclipses have, you know how you have a door jamb and you have sometimes a wedge, right? Because you have those automatic doors that if you don't wedge them, they'll close. The eclipses kind of do this thing where they remove that wedge, so that the door has, you can use that door example, you can use the idea that something is holding a ball in place on a slope and whatever's holding it, and the ball starts to roll downhill. All right, well, if you have Jupiter retrograde in your birth chart, stay in action, and I'm going to wish you the best, and I hope that things manifest for you. I mean, that's the best that I can do. Don't just rely on Jupiter. Don't just rely on the astrology, folks. You know, show up, do your best. I say this on multiple levels. I say this not to be cheeky, and I'm not saying that as a disclaimer. I say this because as an astrologer, it's something I've learned to ultimately, you've heard me say this tons of times on this channel. Ultimately, it doesn't, everything ultimately does boil down to our intentions, our actions, our efforts, the right strategies for us, as symbolized by our rising sign and the North Node placement in our birth chart, being in alignment by why we are here, if you really want to factor astrology into the equation. All right, I will leave it at this. As I said, if you want to avail of the 30-minute $50 Eclipse special, where I will be discussing for your birth chart how the eclipses are affecting your birth chart, which direction to move in, what to release on the Aries Libra axis, as well as the eclipses that we're moving into in the Pisces Virgo axis, email me on or before the 10th of October, so we can then go ahead and get that scheduled. That's the deadline. I'm also running another special for $50, 30 minutes, to talk about the water sign trines that are coming up. You'll see those in my past few videos. And of course, there are other readings, single topic readings, other readings that I also offer, my regular reading offering as well, and I can give you rates and information on those if you email me using the email description below. There's a thanks button underneath this video. You can use that to contribute to the channel. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you find the content useful, tell people about it. The content, share the content, whatever works for you. And next to the subscribe button, there's a bell icon. Hover over it, wiggly bell on top, click on that. You'll be notified when I do new videos. Comment, like the video, comment on the video if you feel so inclined, and I think that gives videos greater circulation on YouTube. Thank you everyone for your support. I hope you found this food for thoughty, and I think next I want to talk about, even though I've done a video on Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn, on the 11th Pluto is direct in Capricorn, so I think I will give you guys a friendly reminder to take that seriously and do what needs to be done there as well. All right, I will leave it at that. Thank you.